Good afternoon and welcome to the Senate Government Operations meeting of
I got 14.
Thursday, May 15th. Thank you. We have two items up for consideration today, 8504. And we heard quite a bit of testimony yesterday on this is the amendments to the charter of the city of Rutland. In fact, I have more vote totals than I've ever had on anything from the mayor. And we had Representative Sandy, help me, her last name, I can't, what is it? Vincent, and Representative Howard. So I would like to vote that out today, and then we're going to take up 397 in what I fervently hope is the final day of testimony on the bill before it grows another arm and a leg and gets to be,
or at least 3 more sections.
even more unwieldy. I did text, or I did email Tucker earlier today to let him know that we would be doing this as a section. We have 5 divided by however many sections there are. Each of us will take a certain number of sections. So we'll need section by sections if you could, and also on the Rutland City Charter. And if that sounds reasonable, we'll vote this out tomorrow before anybody else has a chance to add to it. And it will go across the hall because there are financial considerations. So it's not going to be on the floor. I don't know when it'll be on the floor. They have a list of bills across there that they're going to have to work long and hard on.
I just want to know who bet on what day for the adjournment.
I'm hoping that we're halfway through the month, right? The 15th. I'm hoping that
It's the Ides of May.
when the next 15 days have elapsed, we will be driving for most of us south. I guess all of us south.
Where are we going?
Home.
I'm going for it.
You're going north. Okay, so if anybody would like, I'll make the motion that we vote out H504 favorably with no amendments.
Good idea. Fourth.
The 4th is fair. 505 is fair.
But
504 is not.
Oh, the Baba.
No, 505 is fair.
Okay, yeah, that's what confused me. I was like, I feel like we just did 504
no, it's not 5.
It was 5:05 yesterday.
the other day. And great job today, Larry.
Yes.
Senator Clarkson,
Yes.
Senator Hart, yes. Senator Rohesky,
Yes.
Senator White,
Yes.
Senator Palmer.
Yes.
Did I say it right?
No.
Oh, how
The
oh,
the
the house.
oh
Oh.
oh oh like cold like a cold. You nailed it. Wow. You nailed it.
I'm going to practice that. Okay, so we have a grand total of 500. And you're gonna be the reporter, right?
Unless, I mean, yeah, again.
Well, I don't know who's gonna read. So it's up to you.
The senator
I can
from
do it.
Rutland.
Oh, I'm from Rutland. So
Yeah, I probably should.
We think so.
Okay, so Jillian will give me a clean copy of the bill and when Melissa folks are in and we'll have something. This would be Thursday, Friday. Next Tuesday would be the day, assuming everything else turns out all that stuff. Now, let's take up 397. And Tucker sent me earlier today, just before 1 o'clock, the draft 2.3 of this Senate Government Operations Committee amendment.
2.3, yeah.
Yeah, Jillian provided you with paper copies. I gave mine to Eric, but I'll look at it here online. One of the things that has come up, and I think I did send an email to everybody, we had a request from VLCT and the bond bank to put in the level debt service. Is that what we refer to this? Level debt service.
And I thought we decided to include it, so I was surprised by Brian's email.
I think we sort of did, but probably not directly asked Tucker to include it.
It was
Senator
from
White.
thank you. It was from I think there were 3 recommendations that we heard around this. It was the unassigned fund balance, this and one other piece. And this was the one that House Ways and Means removed.
Very good.
That, I have to say, I'm impressed you remember all that, because all,
Municipalities.
yes,
Yeah.
I know, it's just like transportation and municipalities, you are just wired for.
You know?
It was and could possibly be against section 12. I don't know where you stuck it in the bill, but, it was originally section 12. So let me just, if I could explain, because I had a rather long conversation today with JFO, 2 of the representatives thereof, and, the reason that the House Ways and Means Committee struck that provision was not that they didn't like it. It was that they felt they hadn't been able to take enough testimony.
Oh,
It was right during the crossover week, as I recall, and they just ran out of time to take a deeper dive into whether they should include it or not. So I again talked with JFO today. I want to phrase this carefully because they did not take a position. JFO did not take a position on this. They just said that policy-wise, we should be aware of certain things that could result, not saying they will, and I don't have a percentage for you, like it's 90%, 50%, 10%. It will or could affect the ed fund payments because, and it focuses pretty much just on TIF districts.
Yeah.
Does everybody understand what a TIF district is?
yes,
A tax increment situation
finance.
where you're basically postponing payments to the ed fund until the increment of what you're developing reaches a certain level, at which point you can. So it front loads the ability of a community to do some development.
Correct. And then the community benefits from a much higher grant list with buildings of much greater value. And we bring more to the ed fund, which more than compensates for that. Ed fund is sort of level funded for those 20 years in between.
And I hear there's this whole bill in Senate Economic Development to do mini tips or what.
Yeah, sure.
Well, that's a different, yeah. Senator,
Well, that was gonna be my question is around, I don't know if this interplays with anything that we're doing to the smaller design tip districts, but my understanding is they have different bond banks. Then, didn't we hear from a guy from the bond bank?
Michael Gogan,
Thank
The one
you.
asking.
Or
us,
gone.
But he's asking.
Oh, great.
Michael.
Oh, okay, great.
Michael Gogan. He's been in at least twice.
Yeah, I was like, I just think.
So we did take testimony.
Okay.
I'll-
Oh,
Go ahead, Cindy. Yelsey.
no, I'm very cautious to do anything that could have an impact on the ed fund right now. That it feels like
Okay.
we're in a really precarious place.
We don't need to do it. I'll just make a couple other points. There has not been a TIF project yet that failed. So they're batting up 1,000 if you take a baseball analogy. What we're doing and what the community will be able to do is take advantage of level payments. But at the same time, it does cost the community more because the interest rate is included by keeping it level. You pay a higher interest rate. So the cost of the municipality is a little bit higher. It's not way higher, but it's a little bit higher in return for the confidence that you're always going to have that payment. It's not going to deviate. Senator Fox.
So is this not the community's choice?
Yes.
Yeah, so
They have to
I
vote.
think the municipality goes into this eyes wide open. They will understand all the implications that they're making. But this is like our mortgage, where you get a mortgage and you pay the same fixed rate for X number of time. It may cost you a little bit more, but then you have a steady rate that you know of, particularly those of us who are lucky enough to refinance at 3.1%. So it is level funding. It is creating an opportunity that individuals have that it would be great for municipalities.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very nice.
And then they each get to make their own decision. They don't, it's not like they have to, just say which students will do it. That's it.
No, you might. Do you want to ask your question? Because I think that.
Yeah, I do kind of want to ask that question.
Yes.
Under section 21 on page 20, it says, education fund refund, the city of Berry TIP district tax increment from 2016 to 2020. They want to take it out of the education fund and put it into their general fund, by the sounds of it, $437,028.
It's what they are owed. They overpaid.
They overpaid.
Yes, it's just a correction.
Okay, same way with the town of Milton.
Yeah,
Yes, they're both overpayments.
they're
And
getting
they're
reimbursed.
getting reimbursed.
Okay,
Yeah,
So-
it's not like a,
No, this might help. This is from joint fiscal. Section 12, assuming we put it back in.
So section 12 is now something else, as you know.
Okay. The original section 12 would allow for municipalities to structure debt repayment through level debt service payments instead of level principal payments as required by current law. The change could have impacts to debt incurred in tax increment financing projects, which are supported by incremental tax revenues from the education fund. Debt incurred with level debt service payments has lower initial payments, which could increase the amount of debt that municipalities could afford, but higher overall interest costs. Both factors could increase the long-run costs of TIF projects to the ed fund. These impacts are hard to measure and depend on the size and type of financing chosen by the districts, that they're still able to incur debt. So for instance, we have probably the best example of one that really worked is St. Albans. And if you've ever been up there, they would not have been able to do the development they did without it. I think South Burlington also has done a TIF and it was very successful. Rutland is in the middle of doing one in the downtown area that will put a big 7-story hotel up in what now is maybe not affectionately referred to, but referred to as about it, because there was a hotel there that burned to the ground in 1973. And it's been nothing but a parking lot since. Killington also has a much larger TIF. I mean, Rutland's gonna borrow a few, I don't say a few million like it's peanuts. Killington is in the 40, 50, $60 million range, which will put a village center. And so anyway, I just bring that up. I'm not trying to advocate for this or not. And I want
I would.
to again make it clear that joint fiscal did not take a position on this. They're just providing us with information.
This joint fiscal note you have for them, we do not have. Is this on our bill or is this on the House bill?
This is probably as recommended by the House Committee on Government Operations. So,
So are they gonna do one on our bill?
I can ask, LegCom or,
Do we need one on?
JFO to do it if you like. It doesn't matter to me one way or another whether, I mean, I should say it that way. It matters to me whether we
Yeah.
choose to do this. I'm just saying that I want to be very careful not to implicate joint fiscal
Yeah.
with any sort of recommendation because they didn't make it.
I just think this gives a town, every municipality's finances are different. And every one of them chooses to manage them differently. I think this gives a municipality another option. Most municipalities do not have TIFs, so this is irrelevant for the vast majority of Vermont's cities TIFs. So I would say that, and I would say that many of them have projects that they bond for. So this gives them another opportunity for how to choose to pay for it over time.
So with that said, as far as I know, that was the only addition to 397 since we last took this up, I think. We can walk through the changes. Tucker's looking perplexed. I don't think.
And Eric's smiling, so there may be more that we just are gonna have to
Oh, no.
cover up and catch.
There are just a handful.
Okay, so let's, if you have it in your hands, let's walk through the yellow portions, I guess, right?
Yes. So for
And
the
those are
record, Governor
3.2.
Anderson Legislative Council, you should be looking at version 2.3,
Yeah.
which is timestamped today at 10:04 a.m. The first change that you'll note is the addition of section 7A. I will admit, I grew fatigued of renumbering the sections over and over and over again, so we added 7A so that I wouldn't have to renumber anything. And this adds the level debt servicing provisions that you have just discussed at length. And the too long didn't read version is that, yes, this allows for consistent repayment value over time from a municipal corporation level debt repayment.
Senator Yoski?
So, and this may be, I think this is actually probably a JFO question, but with the way that TIP works.
Yeah.
Do they retroactively pay that back into the ed fund? So
It is all paid back to the ed fund, but the ed fund isn't owed anything. It continues, so a property, let's say a property has no value, say it has a very low value, and it is going to be redeveloped. The bond goes out, and if the town pays the bond back, they're allowed to use a piece of the increment to pay the bond back, and they pay a piece of the increment to continue to pay their education fund tax at the rate the property was. And the rest, they get to pay back the bond as it goes through its development. At the end of the development, so the ed fund is losing nothing. The ed fund is continuing a steady state of what it was, of what they paid for that building in the state it was. And at the end of the work on the TIF district, it is then revalued. It has a new grand list value, and the ed fund benefits from a robust new grand list value. So the increment, an increment on is paid to the ed fund continuously to pay for the increment is used to pay the bond back, and the steady state that the tax continues to be paid to the ed fund. The ed fund loses nothing. The ed fund has never lost anything. It's just as it doesn't gain in huge value until the end of the project when it has its new grand list, and it then gets a lot more income. So you don't ever lose value. You just, the increment from the bond is gone. The increment, the financing goes to pay back the bond over time. And how do I explain it better?
No, you're doing a good job.
Yeah.
It's all circular. It's like the big debate is, would the development have happened without the investment? And what many folks in TIF district communities like Hartford say is, we use that money to reinvest in sewer and wastewater and all these things that allowed that development to happen. And without it, we wouldn't have that increased value of that property because the development wouldn't have happened. But what folks say in counter to that is like, it would have been developed anyway. We would have gotten the money regardless, and instead we're getting a delay on the receipt of the incremental finance part.
But otherwise, you'd have an undeveloped property that would
Yes, that's
stay,
the
continue
debate.
to be undeveloped and earning and contributing the same amount to the ed fund. The ed fund never loses. It's just the ed fund doesn't gain until really significantly until the end of the project.
Yeah.
And then it gains a lot. So you could amortize the gain over 20 years or 30 years and say, oh, we gained this much every year, but actually the big gain is at the end. And then going forward, it has the additional grand list value. But the ed fund never loses money.
I appreciate that. And I just feel like I've heard counter arguments to that.
I know, but it's really a
JFO saying that it might impact the ed fund. So why would JFO say that it might impact?
Because
the ed
they are not fundamentally as fond of TIFs as some of us are. And we actually have an opposing view on, I think a lot of us have an opposing view to JFO about the financing. Some of us view it as a steady state for the ed fund with a big bang at the end. And they view it as a loss to the ed fund because it's not continuing to grow. But if the property isn't developed, it's not growing, and the tax benefit isn't growing.
Well, it's not necessarily true, because if the property isn't developed, like, I mean, we've certainly seen property values just keep going up, regardless of whether the property has changed.
This is true, but it continues to pay. It continues to pay at the rate that it was. It is a little bit frozen in time, and it pays its way. It doesn't not pay its way.
Okay.
You're right. It doesn't necessarily. And I need to be reminded if it didn't.
Anyway, that is helpful. I will seek to gather more information. It seems I need a better understanding of TIF districts.
Okay.
I don't have any further.
And I think that phrase there, but for, is important.
But it's not in this bill, the but for.
No, but it's sort of like the premise of the tip. If if in Rutland's case, it remained a parking lot in essence, it wouldn't necessarily have changed the value that much. And maybe
Right.
the downtown property does go up just because of where.
That's
it
a
is.
that's a good example.
Yeah.
A parking lot is gonna have pretty steady state contribution to the ed fund over 20 years. However, during that 20 years, if it's built into apartments and housing, by the end of the 20 years, it's gonna contribute so much more to the ed fund. And it will have still paid its way
But
as
the
that
project isn't gonna take 20 years. Like, it may take 20 years to pay off, but it's gonna have a much higher value
Right.
long before the end of the
Exactly.
20 years.
And the minute it has higher value, I believe the minute, well, that we should correct, but I believe the minute the project's done, it begins to collect grand list value.
It depends.
Does it? Okay, we should clarify that, but I
Okay.
thought it did.
And they also have to get everything up. So the other big thing you should know about TIF districts is this is not just a willy-nilly, you get it or you don't get it. It's a very lengthy process and a designated area has to be identified within that. So with Hartford, for example, we actually only have a special zone that any TIF projects can be developed in, and it was for areas that were blighted. It's kind of where we chose, like areas that were. You use St. Albans as the example, but White River Junction before the TIF district was not a place you would visit. But the infusion of investment capital, because we identified it as a TIF district, was a tool in our toolbox to invest in wastewater and sewer, to invest in housing. It let us actually be able to develop mixed use housing where previously it may have just been commercial property. There's all sorts of very interesting ways that it's a benefit for downtowns that have long time. But my understanding of this language is it's just another tool in the toolbox of the municipalities for their own bonding capacity. It doesn't really change functionally what TIF districts do anyway.
And most of them, I'd say most of them, some of them are 10 years. They're not all 20.
They're not, yeah, they vary in time.
Yeah,
But-
they have to be
Well, this one would
approved.
also vary more than 40 years.
But some infrastructure projects take a long time to pay back, our sewer department.
Yeah.
And also, there are very few towns with TIF districts. So I think a TIF is a bit of a red herring here because a vast majority of municipalities are going to take on debt that are independent of TIFs. Correct, Tucker? Starksboro. When was the last time Starksboro took out a bond?
There's a lot of debt out there, so. Not all of it's TIF.
Apologize for derailing the conversation.
Not
It's fine.
really.
I would encourage you to do a deep dive on this area, particularly with Jonathan Gray and Sister, let's say, council, definitely with JFO. And one of the, in my time here, one of the most critical pieces to understand is the time style of money and how that plays into calculating whether or not there's a loss experienced. So with that note,
Thank you.
um,
Yeah, that's okay.
that was section 7A.
Yep.
The next few changes are in section 8, and I did send this over in the previous version, but have not walked through this with the committee. This is
You see,
Within-
this is still there.
the emergency powers of the governor. This is the dam drawdown provisions.
This is Ben. This is from Ben. This is Ben Gardner. It's the dam provisions.
This is actually from some of the federally licensed dams, which is outside of Ben's purview with the dam safety program. Correct? Yes. So in subdivision E1, first change, this was a request directly from the committee. There was a request that the director of the Division of Emergency Management be the officer who makes the determination whether or not there is significant reason to believe that authorizing an advanced drawdown will decrease the risk of substantial damage to persons or property within the state. Previously, this was a determination made by the governor and the secretary in consultation. Now this will be the director of the division.
Oh, good. So
Similarly,
he
and
agreed to that.
in consultation with the
Just one meeting
secretary.
and you guys threw my name up.
Damn,
I'm good with that.
Well, we thought that was the best idea.
it made more sense
In consultation.
that you be the one determining emergencies.
While we're pausing there, may I ask a question?
Sure.
Do you still get accurate weather information? We're very worried about your weather.
Oh, absolutely. We
Oh.
went through this weekend, so for anyone who didn't know, there was some significant events that could potentially have happened this past weekend, and we went to an enhanced operations level. And we had
Friday, I drove through it.
Friday and Saturday, and the National Weather Service, every second that we asked them something was very quick to respond.
Good, so because we have heard that the Trump administration's reining in that division.
NOAA in general.
Yeah,
Yeah, we haven't seen any detrimental effects on the Burlington National Weather Service as of now.
good, yes.
I would like to take this opportunity to make a plug that, given the work that this committee has done over the past 2-3 years, this committee this year and the previous iteration of it 2 years, that we consider taking a committee field trip to the National Weather Service operation in Burlington. It's incredible. And you can ask some of these questions
I would love
directly
to.
to our people there. One of those people is a constituent of mine, and I'd be very happy to ask him if he would host us, and I'm certain he would say yes.
Sure.
They love being tours.
And would you like to go with us, Eric?
I think Eric probably spends a fair amount of time there
I
already.
do, but I would love to take a field trip with you.
All right, you could show us how you use it.
I think it's a
Where is it? In Burlington?
It's at the airport.
At the airport.
Oh, it's at the airport? Yeah, I'd love to
Thank you.
do that. Tucker might like
I
to.
support the change.
We just got
You know,
one today. We gotta get all our bills out and then we'll probably have a couple of days, but
Hank would like to come with us.
yeah. I think
Oh,
that'd be
he
great.
would love airplanes.
If you ever
Okay,
want to
so-
tour the Emergency Operations Center, we're always happy to do those.
So what we've
Well,
done
we're ready.
in essence is direct the director of DEM in consultation with the secretary or designee to come up with a decision about whether whatever potential risk there is, which I think is what we wanted to do.
So,
Yeah.
so, I mean, I hate to ask, but why would he have to consult with somebody who knows a lot less of what's going on?
Well, in the original version, it did say in consultation with Secretary of Natural
Well,
Resources.
I appreciate that, but this may have to be very fast decision making. I mean, I would just love to have the director's opinion on
Okay.
the speed with which some of those decisions have to be made. Is it a kind of decision that you're making already in consultation with other people?
No, I mean, these dams have capacity in them, so it's not an immediate. If you have the ability to release water, that means the dam is still in a position where it's structurally sound, right? So you have the time
You have
before
time.
the wall is filling up. So I advocate for A&R being on there as well because they're the dam experts. I can say that there's lots of bad weather coming and we're gonna get this much rain and this is gonna happen. They're the ones that are gonna say, that means this at this dam.
Okay.
You know, Ben Green, the
Okay.
person I'm gonna call that says, yeah, that's gonna cause problems and we need to do this. So I think the team effect.
So you stop doing that?
Yeah, I think of the father and the son in Rutland, and I think, ooh, sometimes it has to be fast.
That was
Oh.
And,
It was
Public
hard,
Works,
yeah.
yeah.
So
But that wasn't dam related.
that was Irene.
It
That was
wasn't-
Irene, but it was damn late.
No, it
That
wasn't.
was strictly a rain event. It never
I thought
stopped.
they were up working on a dam.
No, they were in a wastewater treatment facility.
Oh, they
The
were in a
floor,
wastewater.
right? It was wastewater?
Correct.
Yeah, and
Ah,
the
okay.
floor gave out.
Sorry,
Okay,
I think.
final evidence.
Yes, so the next two changes relate to the federally licensed dams. And the language that you saw in the last few drafts, federally licensed sites were not directly called out. And they would only be folded in to the extent that they were required to get a waiver for a state level permit. Here, there's some express language added in for the federally licensed dams. It says that the secretary shall consult with applicable dam owners for federally licensed sites. So there's a consultation requirement for those dam owners at the federally licensed sites. Those are mostly your hydroelectric dams.
Sorry, I've lost you. I thought we were on page 8.
We're on
We're on
page
page 8, line 11.
Oh, I went down at the bottom of it. Thank you.
Okay.
We are now moving down to the bottom in subdivision 2. This is the subdivision that relates to dam owners being authorized to use a waiver and the requirement that a plan be adopted first. The second sentence now reads that this subdivision requiring the plan to be adopted ahead of time shall not apply to dam owners that have existing plans approved by the secretary in effect that address emergency drawdowns. Now, there is something that I need to note for you about this language. In other contexts, Supreme Court of Vermont has looked at when the legislature calls out an existing permit, license, plan, whatever it might be, and it is existing as of the date that this becomes effective. The word existing does not magically transport itself prospectively into the future. So if this is signed into law and becomes effective July 1st of 2025, it is those plans that are in place as of July 1st, 2025. And I can point you to the cases that examine this in the context of the prohibition over regulation of shooting ranges by municipalities, because the language that is used is existing ranges. And the court pointed to that and said existing at the time that this statute became effective. And they look retrospectively from that date. So
No,
that
as hard.
legally is how this would be interpreted. So existing as of the effective date of this act. If there is different intent from the committee and the folks who are proposing this, then I would suggest doing some tinkering to get rid of existing and replace it with another term that would tie in any plan adopted by one of these federally licensed sites that conforms already with these requirements. Would find a better legalistic way to describe that.
Senator Bielski.
So I imagine, and I'm not sure, that's helpful information. I didn't know the Supreme Court rulings on the word existing. But I would imagine that what we're trying to get at is that if a dam owner has a plan that's in compliance, it doesn't need to go. So that is different than existing as of July 1st.
Right.
And so I think we might need, at least that's my sort of thoughts, that it seems duplicative, no matter when you made the plan, that if you have a compliant plan, you can't just use the compliant plan. And I wonder if there's a way of sort of, if that is in fact the committee's intent, if the language were to read, the subdivision shall not apply to dam owners that have an approved plan in place or something along.
We can find a way.
Okay.
And that would include all plans. I mean,
Right.
as opposed to a date certain plan. So if they had just, they've done a more recent plan, that would be included.
Right, because I would assume that that is the actual intent, is that if they
All plans.
have a plan
Right.
that is already approved, they don't have to also
Right.
do this, regardless of when they got the plan approved.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So sorry, I just need to clarify this. So the waiver is, the waiver is to allow dams to draw down in anticipation on their own. Remind me what the remind me. Sorry, I know I should just know this, but I'm just.
The way that this section operates is that a determination is made that there is likely going to be a flooding
A flood.
event that poses a substantial risk to persons or property.
Right.
That determination would be made under this language by the director.
Right.
Once that determination is made, waivers for state permits that apply to these dams can be issued. Right, and this is about the release of water into a river.
So the
or
waiver is that they
surface
don't need to
water.
get a permit to release water.
Correct.
Thank you. That I was pretty sure.
Correct. And those permits are under the water quality control chapters in Title 10. So we're talking about ecological and water quality impacts from releasing waters from the dam.
CSO events potentially,
Sure.
right? Combined sewer overflow events or something, an example of where you need a permit to release in that section.
Sure. I'm not sure if the dams would be immediately implicated in CSO events, but
Yeah, we don't normally dam up our waste
Well, I feel like, but it's the
Hey,
same
let's go
chapter.
swimming in the
really.
lake, guys.
What's a CSO?
It's a long story
Lion
short,
Stewart.
the
Oh,
basically in natural resources, we spent a lot of time last year on this kind of
Yes.
conversation because the release of waters, whether it be a dam or a facility or anything, we highly regulate for water quality, for example. So it sounds like what this language is doing, if I'm understanding Tucker correctly, is to allow in very high emergency situations for us
Yeah.
to say we're reprioritizing
Yeah.
the safety and liability of people downstream compared to what we normally would prioritize, which is water quality or some other
Right.
situation within that. Is that kind of a fair way to read it? This is not natural resources and not the.
Sure. I will,
Sure.
I will stick to the words on the page instead of building some of the hypotheticals. If there is a permit under the Vermont Water Quality Standards or 10 VSA Chapter 47, that a dam owner would be required to get before releasing waters from the dam. The governor has the authority to waive those applicable permits, allow the drawdown of the dam in advance of a weather event that poses substantial risk to persons or property due to flooding.
Makes sense.
It makes total sense. And just to the water quality piece, a major flooding event totally screws up the water quality. So I think there's even a balancing of how much damage is happening to water quality by doing an emergency drawdown, because you potentially prevent a massive flooding event that draws all kinds of stuff from the roadways.
Oh,
And
yeah.
And for purposes of some of the
Probably
hypothetical effect, you drew up, the presentation from Ben called out some of the downstream impacts from the release of the dam waters that are considered in this context.
yes.
That's great. I think I'm surprised we had not previously allowed for this. Maybe it was.
I'm shocked after I read actually that we didn't change this.
Well,
We
it
tried.
did change a lot of stuff, but it was at that time and then
Yeah,
once the emergency had passed, the existing regulations went back in.
This is why we had to do a flood safety act. Times.
Oh, there might be 3 and 4 coming.
Okay.
Section 9, I
Yep.
have this was a request from the committee to have a task force provide recommendations
Yep.
concerning federally licensed dam sites. So the name of the task force he provided was the Dam Safety Task Force. I'm not certain that this task force exists at the state level. There is a dam task force, but it is not a governmental committee, to my knowledge. It is ad hoc committee established within, I think it's the Natural Resources Council. It has a different name, and it's wildlife biologists, wetland ecologists, and fishery management folks.
so Ben didn't know about.
No, this was a request from Senator
There
Watson.
is the committee and I don't know the name of it.
Yeah.
Sad my status on it. It's looking at regionalization of emergency response to dam failures.
Oh, okay. Yeah, maybe we should look into this because
And I thought that came out of the flood caucus from last year. The flood, not the flood caucus, but the flood bill from last year. I don't have that.
The act number of the flood bill from last year.
That was-
But just so we understand, this came from Senator Watson from Natural Resources looking over it.
When she was in the chair.
That's
Yeah.
very good.
And I actually, if I remember correctly, there is, I do think that in general, I support the proposal, whether or not.
Just want to
Yeah.
make sure we give it to an entity that exists.
Yeah.
I support the idea, but yes, I think giving it to an entity that actually exists makes it more likely that we'll get the report.
Well, it's more likely that it'll happen.
Yeah, I think the idea was to make it clear what authority the governor had versus federal officials in terms of federally licensed dams. He can put an executive order through, but if he doesn't have jurisdiction over that entity, it doesn't matter.
Mhm.
So we're just asking whoever these people are to get together and figure it out, I guess. So there is no dam safety task. force.
Also, given what I learned last year about how many unsafe dams there are, there's a.
Thousands. Was it 310?
It is 310. I'm looking, I'm literally control F searching for the word dam right now.
You know, that makes me so happy because Becca's memory is always not proven to be so good today. That I'm so glad I heard 310.
Well, I'm trying to remember because what you just said about the biologist, I feel like we did hear about this last year in natural resources related more towards the implications on fisheries and like wildlife behavior, because that's much more like right now, it's less about the drawdown aspect in emergencies and it's far more about like how ecologically are you impacting the surrounding areas.
And,
But I don't remember what the name of that group
so,
was.
Do you recall, the word dam is actually not in the flood safety bill that we passed last year, so and now I'm trying to remember so we actually get the language out, because natural resources did a lot of work on dam safety, and I'm wondering if it ended up in the natural resources bill instead.
I'm just hoping it passed now that you said that. Okay. I spent a lot of time talking about
I know my staff is attending the meetings.
okay, so
It's
and
going.
Ben would know whether this existed or not, or guess Tucker, did you consult Ben? And he said he didn't know, but
I did not consult them. I took instruction from the committee and moved forward from there.
Yeah.
There is a dam safety division.
that's, isn't that Ben?
That's Ben.
That's Ben.
There's a dam safety program.
Maybe,
According to my person, it's Legislative Committee on Dam Emergency Operations Planning.
Cool.
so the long name,
Legislative
Committee.
committee on
Is that-
dam.
it's not, it should say legislative.
Yeah, Legislative Committee on Dam Emergency Operations Planning. Because it was specifically about,
So was it a time limited committee?
I believe they were supposed to create a report. But I thought the report honestly was supposed to be due sometime late last year, so I'm not sure they're on schedule.
So Tucker's looking up whether they existed, if they gave a report.
Is the Legislative Committee different than a?
Yeah.
No, he's got it. Tucker's got it.
There
I
was a
don't-
dam safety.
I will do some research on this and circle back with you.
And this is strictly federal dams.
Right.
Yeah.
The intent here is to have whatever this entity is, once we figure out their appropriate name and whether they have time and capacity to do this, because who knows if they cease to exist by the time this becomes effective. But with all those provisos, the objective is to ask them to report back to your committee and House Government Operations on the application of this waiver emergency power to federally licensed dam sites,
Yeah.
if there's any application at all.
Okay.
On federally, on FERC's? Or federally owned.
Right, yes, I'm
Which
FERC
is-
regulated dam sites.
Okay.
And that leads us to the only other change was just, within the, rules provision, which is in section 20 on page 20. So if you go to page 20, it starts on line 5. Hold on.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, I remember this.
And this preserves those
This is a very important thing.
federal regulations that are incorporated by reference until January 31st of 2029. The date that the committee did ask for January 30th and also framed it as the last day in January in 2029.
No, 31
Yeah,
days.
31st. So I put it as the 31st, and a conforming amendment is that the prospective repeal is also bumped out to January 31st.
I wanted the third.
No,
That's
I
great.
just
Thank
recall us saying end of January. I had to appreciate it.
If you go with me to the last page, the last thing that I need to know for you.
That's okay, this
I'll
one is
ask you
pretty
about
great.
that committee, the dam safety committee already doesn't exist.
I was just.
It sunsetted March 1st, 2025. But they're still meeting, so don't
I
worry.
also found it's an act.
I wonder where your.
It's in
people are going.
121. Yep, I just found it.
This is their get out of the office excuse.
I wonder if
Some
we
of the
might want
dam
to
safety
extend
committee.
their, in here, perhaps extend their. Because I did find it, it's an Act 121, it was a dam safety bill for natural resources.
Reinstitute
And it is the
Probably
study, there's no legislative, it's the study committee on dam emergency operation planning.
Well, maybe I'll put out a suggestion in, could we just make it the dam safety division has to report back to us on this?
Yes.
I mean, is that rather than,
I mean, I
Why
don't know.
not?
It feels like it falls right within kind of what we're already asking this group. Like,
oh, I guess that's true.
and if
Which-
they're not done their work, we've discovered they're actually right
I
now
disagree,
not
you
done
can-
the group that, yes, the dam committee.
Okay, that's not.
Yes, I know, but you have a person on it.
I'm not
You have a person on it though.
Yeah.
So that's why I keep,
understood.
Yeah, you want VEM to be involved, yeah.
yes, I want VEM to be involved. This is my, and what we're also hearing is that this study committee that was supposed to sunset March 1st already has not done their work. And so I'm thinking what might make sense is to actually extend,
Oh,
give them more
different
time
I
to
love that.
complete the work that they are doing and do this additional piece.
Could it might be wise to have them weigh in with us and to actually know what they're up to and what they accomplished or didn't. Whoever chaired them, who chaired that group, do you know?
Hold on, and I will tell you. Membership. One member of the Department of two members, but I'm trying to find the chart.
The problem with having more witnesses is I want to move the bill
No,
tomorrow.
I know, but if we have an incorrect thing, we want to actually find out how it,
I'm fine just striking,
oh, okay, then let's just.
Well, versus,
unless we can find an entity that actually exists.
well,
So-
versus striking it, we do have the literal dam safety division, which is a department of DEC that could report to us, which would be Ben. Gardner. The guy-
But I'm
Ben-
not
Ben
sure
Gardner.
given this budget with VEM, because we're talking about emergency response. The Secretary of Natural Resources called the first meeting and they elected a chair, so I don't know who the chair is.
But your people would
Yeah.
know. Ben would know who the chair was.
Cause like
I
I
don't
want
think we're
VEM
listed.
involved.
I don't even think we're listed as a person on there. We just wiggled our way in, I believe.
Boy, we do great.
You were, you went through a sluice gate that was open so
We
wide
did.
with a waiver.
You had
That
this
you-
one more thing you wanted to tell us.
I was going to note for the chair that if you
No,
want to hit your goal
you're on it.
tomorrow, I will send information this afternoon with the policy choice of whether you're going to assign it to a division somewhere. Or
Okay.
whether you are going to attempt to get this information from the now terminated by law. study
But still
committee,
meeting.
But still meeting.
Well, or at least according to Eric's staff.
So,
I want to go to the next meeting.
No, it's a pro capital charge.
Yeah.
section 24 in the effective dates.
Yeah.
There's a change.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, no. Is
Yeah,
it
we had to-
29?
On the tax.
Section 10 kick, which contains the local option tax updates, the shift in the share for municipalities is going to take effect on October 1st, 2025. That bumps this out 1 quarter. And if you'll recall from all of the various, local option taxes that were in charters, it's typically the department needs 90 days after a local option tax becomes effective to begin administering. And here it's a quarter past the date that this act becomes effective and the share shifts.
This was at the request of the tax.
Yeah.
Mr. Stein, I think his name is.
Andrew.
Yeah. So I asked Tucker to put the date in. Does anybody have a problem?
Does it work for Dan?
That's what they asked for.
Yeah, that's what I asked.
Yeah.
That, I mixed up.
You
It's
see-
interesting. After the committee was asking for funds. Yes, and
What afternoon, what?
I'm just mixed up my dates with 2 different bills. So it's okay.
Okay.
This just happens.
So the one outstanding issue, I'll send some information. Dams
Who is going to,
Who's in charge?
for
who's in charge? Who's on
Well, can
first?
I ask a follow-up question of
Sure.
VEM friends? Are you okay with having the dam safety division? You work very closely with them. If ultimately you found that this group may not be meeting or has previously been maybe not as active in the regards that we may have expected, are you comfortable? Because I think Senator, she was concerned about you not being a part of that conversation.
I would be more comfortable with it being the dam safety division because I think their interaction with the federally owned dams is they have a better relationship necessarily
Cool.
than this.
Okay.
I believe the task of that group was to come up with a mechanism to alert downstream citizens if a dam was going to fail.
Oh,
The idea being that one town couldn't handle it all because it's multiple towns that are being affected. And the lack of municipal government, blah, 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 all the things we know. So that's the only thing I know is that the ARPC didn't necessarily want it. So
You're more comfortable with the dam safety division.
Okay.
I would be comfortable with that.
And
Okay, I
I
mean,
think
it-
we can save Tucker the work of, I mean, you might want to know what your staff person is doing when you're going to these meetings.
I have a note now, yes. I mean, this is basically saying that you want the dam safety, whomever, to talk to the federally regulated dams to see what
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
authorization the governor has to
Yeah.
draw them, so. And
Oh, no,
there
if
could
it's
be no.
is a reporting requirement, doesn't require a written report, so this could be the dam safety division doing this research for you and then reporting back to you in some informal way.
cool.
Yeah, because as I read the task of that group, this is kind of in there. Like recommend and prepare a regional emergency action plan, identify like.
I love those things.
But I'm
But that's fine.
disappointed that they never finished their work, because we needed that done.
Well, maybe they're still working on it.
As we learned last session, so it's hard to get mobilized around dam safety. Remember, it took a
So,
lot.
just as a follow-up, Mr. Chair, when we have an hour or so in the afternoon of the next, it would be great to find out, identify who the chair was and get them to come in and give us a report.
Yeah, before the end of the year, that's great.
Section 23 of 121, determination of Federal Energy Regulatory Commission jurisdiction. Like it's literally in the bill from last
Maybe
year.
they already solved the thing.
Yeah,
Maybe they explored it at least and have an update for us.
right? Oh, interesting.
That's part of their charge, right? So can you just read it again?
So part of their charge, hold on, I lost it.
Yeah, so.
But it's Act 121 from 2024. And all of their
What section?
Done.
Act 121 from
2024 and the
such.
dam safety groups, the study committee on dam emergency operations planning begins in section 22 on page 52.
Another big bill.
Oh,
Oh, both the flood bill and the dam safety bill were over 60 pages long.
Yeah,
Did you report it? No, this was your committee.
This was natural
This was not
resources.
us.
no, but
No.
I think it was Anne and I split it with Chris Gray doing part of it. This
Mhm.
was,
Yeah,
I've just, Anne used to, Anne used to be right there and now she's,
Right.
okay.
Yes, Tucker, that was Bob.
No,
It was Bob.
Bubba at the end,
Dan was in.
and what?
based on the last 2 minutes of discussion, I have updated the draft to be draft 2.4. I have replaced the dam safety task force, which never existed, with the dam safety division.
Yeah.
In going back to some of the earlier discussion, I also updated the provisions around plans or drawdowns that have already been approved. Instead of referencing existing plans and triggering some of that legal analysis, it would now read that the subdivision doesn't apply to dam owners that have other plans approved by the secretary in effect that address emergency drawdowns. So if you have some other plan approved by the Secretary of Natural Resources that addresses emergency drawdowns, you're already covered and you don't have to conform to the new requirements established in that subdivision. I believe. Unless I'm wrong,
If you have a plan.
that is everything.
this addresses.
We're gonna get a clean copy tomorrow.
Yeah, Eric had one other thing which, I don't know if you want to take the chair. Instead of impacted by floods, it was
Tucker, did you come up with additional language for that vulnerable versus impacted?
So to reorient you all, I had to move the chair. I've humidified that. It's very warm in here.
Yes.
What?
In here.
So
It's not warm, it is finally a decent temperature.
I'm with her.
I'm
I'm with him. Maybe it's this hemisphere.
I'm baby bear, I'm very happy.
The voluntary buyout language, which is in section 3 or 4, let me scroll as quickly as I
Section
can.
3, page 3,
Page 3.
Thank you.
subsection C, lines.
Subdivision C1C,
Sheets.
Oh, jeez.
line 7 and 8.
Right.
Ooh.
This allows in this section, the Community Resilience and Disaster Mitigation Grant Program to be used for the new language, voluntary buyouts for flood impacted properties. And the concern that was raised is that the current program that has been run, it isn't just impacted properties, it's also flood vulnerable properties.
Okay.
This was discussed in other committees, and the discussion revolved around if you're going to have a program and statute for these flood vulnerable properties, do you have to define vulnerable? Because it is easy just from the common understanding of what a flood impacted property is to point to a property that has been damaged by flooding and say, yes, this is flood impacted. It has happened. The event has occurred. However, keeping this just as flood impacted limits the program, which is currently not limited in that way. So a solution, if you wanted to reflect the current practice, because this is an including clause, which means including but not limited to, would be to state voluntary buyouts for flood impacted or vulnerable properties.
I'm fine with that.
Oh, yeah, the or is a great idea, yeah.
Okay, the only issue that I reflected on earlier was there's a limited amount of resources available for any of this. If you make it vulnerable, you at least are more likely to have more people involved with properties that are not impacted yet, but just vulnerable. And that would reduce the amount of resources available for those that were impacted. Not saying that that's a bad thing. I'm just
That's-
making sure that we understand by using that word, we're changing the conditions that would exist.
There's just one clear, it's not a pro rata distribution of funds. So there's a review committee that looks at all projects independently.
Okay.
So it could be that if there's a large amount of impacted, they would get the money versus it's been blue sky for 3 years. Now we have some money and we think these might be vulnerable, then we can use that money.
Okay.
But it's not, one's not exclusive of the other.
Point taken. Senator Biggins.
I would also think, presumably, if we allow both, we might get to a point where there are fewer impacted properties because we've prospectively pulled the vulnerable ones out, and it could actually save the state money over in time.
Yeah, and just to be clear, for example, for the mitigation funds from July 23, we got, let's say, $80 million. We had $400 million worth of interest in that. So we're already oversubscribed. Significant.
One final legal note about this language is that even if you are adding this, this is in the including clause as an example of a project that implements disaster mitigation measures, adaptation, or repair, including watershed restoration, voluntary buyouts for flood impacted or vulnerable properties, and similar activities that directly reduce risks to communities' lives, public collections of historic value, and property.
Or vulnerable.
Or vulnerable. Drop all you on vulnerable in?
Yeah, let's add the vulnerable.
You know me, I'm all here for support.
I mean, but you're,
I'm sure we get support to the vulnerable.
it's about resilience. That's what this section is about.
I think it's all about resilience.
Yeah, and that includes a bigger group of people.
Which could mean that they don't get flooded in the future.
Senator,
Perfection,
you've
perfection,
been quiet.
So, yeah, I'm safer that way.
Okay, would you want to include the phrase voluntary or?
I could use phrase
Vulnerable.
Yeah.
No, that's the vulnerable.
Okay.
vulnerable, voluntary.
You want it, you want it.
Those are all the updates that you've requested for what will be draft 2.4, which I will send later this afternoon. I just have to figure out whether vulnerable requires a hyphen before it,
But and
flood
that's like,
impacted or hyphen vulnerable.
Senator Blackson.
I mean, given Ben isn't here, do you think we should just?
Should ask him if he wants to.
Yeah, I guess
Ben
that's,
if he
I
wants
guess
to
that's
take this on. I
Yeah,
think
we
it
are
would
at-
be a nice thing to do.
Well, I'm not against that. And please understand, I'm not trying to rush this through.
No, I appreciate it,
I
but
just-
I could email them right now.
At some point, if we don't move it, it's not gonna happen because
Yeah.
finance is backed up
I
like
agree.
a
Yeah.
flood.
There's a bottleneck.
Okay,
There's a.
let's give a house things not emergency drawdown.
No, we can have them come in tomorrow and just say,
Just
yes, I can
confirm
do
that
it.
it's
I
okay.
understand what you want me to do.
I just suggest we do
Okay,
that.
so Ben Green, is it?
Yes.
Ben Green,
Ben Green.
Yeah,
But you
just,
know-
maybe we could just ask Julian to shoot him an email
Yeah.
if he has any final comments on
Yeah, that'd
it.
be even better.
you know, after Tucker, do you have that redrafted? If you just sent that paragraph to Jillian, she could include it in her email to Ben. How about that?
Yeah.
And then just say,
Great.
are you
Good
okay
idea.
with it?
Yeah. As usual, my committee is.
What is baby mama?
It's you. It's
do.
you.
No.
You're getting texts on your.
I know, but so I have to just turn off my sound.
You could also turn off your notifications if you don't want to wholesale turn off your sound.
We are.
I
working
did
on
turn
it.
off.
So we have a 22-page bill. I don't know what the last draft was. It couldn't have been that much different. Don't forget, we divided this by 5, so those of you that are
Oh, yeah.
impacted by,
If you're vulnerable, I'm vulnerable for
or
seconds.
vulnerable
I'm not, oh,
changes.
Larry, I'm 9 through 14. We've got you 15 through 16 for this bill.
And I had 1 through 6, I believe.
But we just
I'm
need,
So it changed, because I brought us home after the technical corrections.
yeah, so we might need to just look at it.
So we're happy with it. And the section numbers have changed.
Yes, they have.
Yes,
So we
alright.
will have to confirm this.
But I know the general areas.
Yes.
So
And again, we'll go
We
across the
will get a
hall.
section. by
So we're not
section.
gonna have to get anything ready by next Tuesday or Wednesday. It'll be over there for probably 4 or 5 days.
Jillian, would you be kind of, is Ben Green, is his email Benjamin.Green or Ben?
Benjamin.Green.
And is Green with an E?
Yes, like the color.
No, but does it have an E in the end?
No.
So it's not. It's 3 E's or 2 E's? Okay,
2 E's.
thanks.
Okay. Thank you, Tucker. Thank you, Eric.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Hopefully, we've reached the point where we have a period at the end of this sentence and we can move accordingly. More.
Yeah, this is good.
Yeah.
This is this is our miscellaneous, bit.
Yeah, no, we've done very good work on this, I think.
Miscellaneous resilience.
Okay.
Um,
We take a 5-minute break before.
yeah, well, that was all that I had on the agenda, although
Why
I
don't we
think
have
that,
elections?
No,
no.
we'd like to talk to you, but.
Oh, great.
Do you want that to be, while we're still on? Or-
Is that okay? It wasn't on your agenda, but we can be on the record. We're ready.
3:25.
If you're okay with it, then yeah.
Sure.
Okay.
Okay.
The corporate cup doesn't start for, when does it start?
5.
6.
2.5 hours.
Yeah, we
Yeah,
have.
it starts at 6. We have to be out of here by 5.
Yeah, yeah,
If you're driving. or
yeah, but
walking.
it's also gonna be pretty late, so I'll leave by 4:30.
So you're running.
Yep.
You're running. And who are you running for? Ledge Council?
I am running with the team called the State House Run Club Returns, and it is currently myself, Representative Kate Nugent, and Representative David Durfee.
Oh, great. But Michael's been running to Chernick, right?
Maybe we.
Who's
could
he
be
running?
great.
Okay, so
Yeah, we're taking.
Julian, let's
that-
take a 10-minute break and get me back.